Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the beefcake world of the all-American muscle car.
The big line moves, but you're lucky if you were. Back in 55, we were making Thunderbirds. Oh, we were making Thunderbirds. We were making Thunderbirds. They were long, long, sleek, and fast. They were classic in a word. Back in 55, we were making Thunderbirds.
Elsewhere in the world, humdrum car makers were serving up lentils and bran flakes, but America was gorging itself on red meat and easy on the sauce.
Back in the 50s and 60s, 97% of all cars sold in America were made in America. Or to be specific, they were made in Detroit, Motor City, Motown.
In the days before oil crises and Watergate, America was in love with itself, and Detroit was making cars to suit the mood. Brash, confident, ebullient. These were great times, and these were great cars with their big engines, their psychedelic paint schemes, and their chrome. Cars like this could only have come from a people with an ego the size of Alaska. You don't put a rear wing like this on a car if you're not quite sure of yourself. The money these cars brought to Detroit turned the cityscape into a high-rise celebration of invincibility. These buildings have their foundations set in V8 brawn. Detroit was home base to Cadillac, Hudson, Packard, Pontiac, Buick, Chevrolet, Ford, Lincoln, Chrysler, Dodge, Plymouth, and Oldsmobile. The factories were steaming. The city was humming, and the people, despite their hats, were happy. You go into any car worker's bar and people will tell you how good it was.
At $3 an hour, it was a well-paid job. At $3 an hour, everybody else in the manufacturing sector was making $1.50.
We were fortunate enough to get in the tail end where you could just say, I don't want to go to college, I don't want to learn anything, I don't want to do anything, I just want to make the easy buck and play prostitute for 9 hours a day and go in and sign up with Papa GM.
I wished I'd went to school and made something more of myself than being an auto worker. But I'm not complaining that much, believe me. At least I'm not a coal miner.
I regret not becoming a hairdresser. It really bothers.
It is a shame because he's done a wonderful job on me, don't you think?
Yeah.
Detroit was a vibrant city. In the 50s, you had a city of almost 2 million. The shops were full, the factories were humming. People worked and lived in Detroit. It was a very vibrant city during that era.
There was a great music scene here. Mix right in the Detroit wheels. Of course, Motown was just gigantic back then. And very exciting. People here, I used to always say when I did my first interviews back then that people here work hard in the factories and stuff, and they like to play hard, and they like the real high energy kind of stuff. And it was pretty exciting back then.
But Bob, never mind the music for now. This is the Motor City. What about the cars?
For some people, a language of youth is sports, you know. In Michigan, it was cars. You had to know that Iskandarian cams, in other words, came in 3 different models, half, 3/4, and full race cams. You had to know things like that, Hedman headers, this was pause traction, the tire sizes, things like that. In Ann Arbor, where I actually grew up and where I did a lot of racing there, you'd have someone like me riding shotgun. We'd get out, 1, 2, 3, and the drivers would go, and you'd watch them go away, count them down and stuff like that. Then the other passengers guy would be a 1/4 mile down the road. He'd be trying to time the 1/4 mile, And I'll tell you, I rode in a lot of 11-second machines, which are pretty fast, even today.
Yeah.
An 11-second quarter, you can't even find a production car that does an 11-second quarter anymore.
Well, not in the USA you can't, which probably explains why there's such a vibrant classic car scene in suburban Detroit these days. Most Friday and Saturday nights you're tripping over meets like this, where people talk old cars, old times, and old music.
That's the Herman service from across the pond there, kids, here by Heartbeat, right here at Honey Radio, WHND 560 AM, right here in the Motor City, as we do a cruise cast on a Friday evening, man, and we are doing it out here at AJ's Lounge and Eatery in Plymouth, right here on Plymouth Road. Between
Some of these guys, when they leave here tonight, are going to go down to Telegraph Road, and when the cops aren't looking, they're going to race these cars between the lights. Big money changes hands, $1,000 a race. Naturally, we asked if we could go along, but one of them said, yeah, we could, but if we turned that camera on, who's going to shove it up our...
Let me hear Detroit, Michigan, make some noise!
Bear in mind, please, we're talking here about public roads where Wilbur and Myrtle are coming the other way. But bear in mind, too, that this is not joyriding. These are not kids in stolen cars. These are dentists and accountants doing what their forefathers have done in Detroit for 50 years. In the olden days, manufacturers used to come down here and pit their new hot designs against the home-tuned opposition. In the olden days, too, the police used to leave everyone alone. But that was the olden days, the days when the Mustang was king of the hill. This was perhaps the most astonishing Detroit success story of them all. In the first year, Ford executives reckoned they'd sell 100,000 of them. In fact, they sold 681,000, making it the fastest-selling car of all time, a record that has never been beaten. But let's not forget, Detroit was more than just cars. It was home to the Motown record label, and that in turn was home to just about everybody.
Motown had just started in the 60s. Barry Gordy had experimented with the likes of Jackie Wilson. He had worked at the Ford Motor Company, and he'd moonlighted at the Flame Show Bar playing keyboard in the evenings in his spare time, and was successful in maybe developing one of the most profound entertainers in show business, Jackie Wilson. So when he met Smokey Robinson and formed the Miracles, he just decided he'd go into the star-producing business and formed Motown right in his house at 2648 West Grand Boulevard. In the 60s, all of the amateur contest winners gathered in the lobby of his company. And one by one, I saw him sign them to his label.
So the place really was humming.
Yes, it was. If you didn't work at the motor company, you knew someone who did. Unfortunately, Detroit has suffered because a lot of the factories have closed down and now they're using robots. But this was a place where everybody knew you could get a good job. That's why my dad and his brothers came here when the cotton gin was invented down in the southern area where I was born.
What sort of cars did you drive in those days?
Big, long fishtail Cadillacs. The ones with the fins on the end? Yes.
So, here we have a city that's given the world everything, from the Mustang to Madonna. A great city, but a city that today is virtually deserted, a city that is smashed and broken. Whenever a contemporary filmmaker wants to set his movie amid scenes of urban deprivation, this is where he comes. Detroit is home base to both Axel Foley and RoboCop. So what the hell went wrong? Well, it would be easy to look under the rising sun and blame the Japanese. When they first arrived on US soil back in 1957, people laughed at these silly little cars. But today, as giant car carriers sweep relentlessly across the Pacific, they're not laughing anymore. Who could have guessed when looking at this hideous creation that one day the best-selling car in America would be a Honda? That there'd be a Lexus parked outside GM's world headquarters. Needless to say, the people of Detroit were not happy.
Well, I kind of hated them. They were taking part of our market. I thought they were pretty, but I hated them. I didn't like them because I knew what they were going to do. They were prettier than what we were building. Back then, we were building celebrities and citations, and we were building ugly cars.
But instead of beating up the designers, car workers vented their anger on the imports.
I don't think the Japanese are totally to blame for Detroit. The reason the Detroit automobiles weren't selling is because they were lousy at this time. They weren't good automobiles, and the Japanese automobiles were much better.
He's right. You can hardly blame the Japanese when American cars of the late 70s especially were so absolutely and unutterably awful. This was their idea of a town car, 94 feet long and powered with a V8 engine, just what you need right after an oil crisis. We just filled it up, and look what it did to this petrol station. And would you just look at the lines? This was obviously drawn by someone who had a ruler and an HB pencil. I would love to have seen the creases in his trousers. I bet the parting in his hair was something to behold as well. Phew. But I bet, most of all, he had sleepless nights about this steering wheel. I can see him at home with his wife now.
Damn it, Myrtle, I can't figure out a way to make this wheel square. I got me square dials, I got me a square dash, I got me a square body. But the wheel, it's circular, ruins the whole car.
It doesn't, actually. What ruins an already very nasty car is the suspension. If you can imagine sharing a waterbed with a baboon that's just been doused in itching powder, then, and only then, can you begin to get the picture. And then there's the interior. No animal died to make this one. Not a single tree was cut down. It's a celebration of man-made materials. It's golfing trousers on wheels. The only surprise is the interior lamp up there is not full of coloured oil and bubbles. And then there's the brakes. Blow on the pedal and the front wheels lock up. The throttle needs more effort, a lot more, but that's okay because the safe top speed of this car is 4. American cars at the time were pretty badly made too. If you bought a car like this in 1976 and it smelt a bit funny, chances are you'd find one of the line workers' tuna sandwiches under the seat. If it rattled, there'd be a Coke can in the door.
When you work in some places is dull, monotonous, as dreadful and tedious as an automobile factory, you try everything you can to invent diversions. Say if Dan and I had jobs that were next to each other and we could combine them, I'd cover Dan's job while he took off and went to the bar or went over and played cards for an hour or slept in a box.
Which, of course, I never would do.
No, he'd be at the bar.
Trouble is, it rather looks like all the stylists were down there too, buying him drinks. And to make matters worse for Detroit, a lot of the cars weren't even being made there anymore.
The Cadillac plant is a plant that Detroit thought would never die. They made cars here for 65 to 70 years. And it just couldn't keep up. It just couldn't keep up in terms of efficiency and competitiveness. The machinery inside was updated, but the layout of the factory, The several stories you see just aren't efficient for automobile production.
So they just closed it down?
Just closed it down. Gave the people a couple years warning, closed it down in 1987 and put about 6,000 people out of work. A few of them got jobs at other car factories, and a lot of them were laid off and haven't worked since.
Why did the car plants all just move out of the centre?
Well, there's a number of reasons for that. One is that it's easier to put up a new new factory than it is to refurbish an old one. And it's easier, the land is cheaper, the suburbs are places where people want to move. You have the highways in the city taking people out to the factories, people settling around the factories. It's just cheaper overall and more expedient. This was a trend that had begun in the 50s. As automobile plants moved out, as suburbs began to develop housing projects, as the highways were developed in the 50s to carry the people out there, the white flight had moved out because they had the advantage in the housing markets over African Americans.
What was the white flight?
The white flight is usually a term referring to the aftermath of the 1967 riot in Detroit.
These tanks are moving out now. Rumbling down 12th.
You had the riot. It was largely an African American riot, and shortly after that, many white Detroiters moved out to the suburbs. Most of them, once gone, never moved back. The city dropped from approximately 2 million people in 1950 to just slightly over 1 million people today.
Geographically speaking, this area is to the centre of Detroit what Knightsbridge or Chelsea is to the centre of London. And yet these houses, these beautiful houses which were built with car industry money, are empty, boarded up, rotting. The people have gone. They testify to the fact that Detroit's heart has stopped beating.
There are many suburbanites who are very proud of the fact that they haven't been down to Detroit for 20 years. Now, they do come down to see the shows, to see the Red Wing hockey team, to see Tiger baseball, but for the most part, they don't shop here, they don't come down here except for entertainment. They stay in the suburbs.
Today, with the Motown record label based in Los Angeles, the only records being made in Detroit are crime statistics. 600 people a year are shot to death here, so that some people now call it the murder capital of the world.
Well, it's not anymore, but again, I think that is another product of the drugs. I believe Miami and then Atlanta won it the last 2 years.
The murder capital of the world was one of the United States was 1 year. So I don't think you can put that label on us and make it stick, and I don't think it's fair to do that. That was something that's in our past.
I'm going to come clean. Detroit is one of my favourite cities in the whole world. I love its faded greatness. I love the fact that they'll do this to a railway station. But you know what I love most of all? You don't have to dig too deep to find that it is still Motor City. Within 20 miles of the city centre Grand Prix track, there are no fewer than 5 drag strips. And every weekend, they echo to the sound of Detroit muscle.
In Detroit, poets write about the cars. The comics are full of cars. The Arts Centre is funded by the car firms. There's a deep-seated fascination for all things automotive, just so long as they're not Japanese.
No, not around this area. You're not going to find them.
What's the problem with them?
We don't like them. Don't like them. Just as soon them not be here. There's not really that many that come out here. Not many that into quarter mile.
How popular would you be if you turned up with a Japanese car around here?
You'd be getting looked at. All eyes would be focused, there's no doubt about that.
What makes an American car better than a Japanese car?
American made. I got an old 60s race car, and we call it Detroit scrap iron. That's what we consider it as. Still around, 1963, still around. Still as good as the 90s, even stronger. You know, I mean, but they're building those cars again. That's what we want.
The 60s cars were nice, and they're a nostalgia thing. They had a lot of power, a lot of muscle, but they aren't like today's cars. Today's cars are something.
I think GM is beginning to realize that the Japanese and whoever, it was just all an invented enemy because they didn't want to look at their own shortcomings. Now they're looking at them.
This is the Lincoln Mark 8. Elsewhere in the world, it's a bit of a joke, but that's okay, because it was designed by Americans for Americans. And they're not that bothered by what we think.
If you drove a Lincoln Mark 8 in England, people would call you Huggy Bear. The police would come along and arrest you. It's almost as though the people at Lincoln have just discovered this new colour called cream. They've spelt it C-R-E-M-E, and they have covered absolutely everything with it. I've got cream knobs, cream switches, cream steering wheel, cream seats, cream carpets, cream seat belts even. Ugh.
But don't get me wrong, this is a beautifully made, inexpensive, quiet, comfortable and very fast car, as well it should be with that 7-litre V8 engine humming and a-strumming away under its hood.
Certain things make the Mark 8 a very good car for Detroit. I hit this, bang, and the doors are locked. Carjacking, remember, was invented here. I've got the power to get away from any mugger's Mustang. And down here, there's space to store my Uzis.
So that's their idea of a luxury car. This is their idea of something a little more raucous, something you can use to frighten the neighbours. It's the latest Mustang, Billy Goat gruff on wheels, the mugger's favourite. Basically, it makes a lot of noise, but doesn't actually do anything. However, though it's all mouth and no trousers, it's still the best and the beefiest Mustang for 20 years. And it isn't just Ford that's back on course either.
GM had the largest quarter in their history 3 months ago, $1.9 billion. So I think they're on the rebound. I think they're doing something right, you know. And as I said, as the car industry goes, so goes the entire state of Michigan, and maybe even more so Detroit.
Chrysler, the smallest of Detroit's big 3 motor manufacturers, very nearly went to the wall 12 years ago. But in November 1983, it was saved by this, the world's first people carrier. A van on the outside, but a luxurious 7-seater estate car on the inside. Loaded up with wood and every conceivable toy, it has become the smash hit in every suburban shopping mall. And with the money it made, Chrysler was able to invest in more new and revolutionary cars, like the LHS. Now you may think the design odd, but curiously handsome. They call it cab forward.
The advantage, of course, of putting the engine and all the tubey bits way up there at the front is that there's more space in the cockpit for people. And that's quite important in America, where, let's face it, people can be pretty big. Every day, 3 times a day, you could tuck into a plate of hash browns, burger, sausage links, bacon.
3 eggs, mushrooms, bell peppers, and 6 rounds of toast. And sitting back here, you would still feel like a bit-part actor in Lost in Space. But don't think this is just another big car for plodding across a big continent full of big people, chewing fuel like it's going out of fashion. This car doesn't even have a V8 engine. If this car was sold in England, it would sell. It really is that good. It just shows that Detroit has put its Mogadon away.
The city of Detroit will become America's next great international city, as well as a great place to do business.
Will it still be the Motor City?
Yes, absolutely. Because bar none, nobody will beat us in competition in developing quality-made cars. We'll take on anybody, anywhere.
Do you think of Detroit mainly as music or as cars?
I think of Detroit as a merge. There's still cars being manufactured here, and we're still known for the best cars in the world. However, Motown is synonymous to Detroit. We've changed the name from Detroit to the Motor City, and now it's just called simply Motown.
You thought I'd forgotten, didn't you? Not a chance. Here it is, the best American car of them all, the Dodge Viper.
There's a hard moon rising on the streets tonight. There's a reckless feeling in your heart as you head out tonight. Through the concrete canyons to the midtown lights, where the latest neon promises are burning bright. Past the open windows on the darker streets, where unseen angry voices flash and children cry. Phony poses with the worn-out lines, tired new money dressed to the nines, the low-life dealers with the bad designs, and the dilettantes with their open minds. Like wind on the plains, sand through the glass, waves rolling in with the tide. Dreams die hard and we watch them erode, but we cannot be denied. But fire inside.
But the Viper is more than just a broken hero on a last chance power drive. It's the tip of an iceberg. It's the cutting edge of a huge American rejuvenation. America is making good cars again. Different, but good.